and so forth. My name is Mike Vivion, if you don't know who I am. The title of this is Full Circle, and it's, the genesis of this talk came from the fact that I have kind of come full circle, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But this was the first airplane I owned. That's a Piper J3 with a 90-horse Continental on it, on Edo 1320 floats. That's sitting in a Fognak Lake. Fognak is the next island north of Kodiak. And this is my current airplane, and probably the last airplane I own. At least at this point, I'm pretty happy with it, and I have no intention of selling it or getting rid of it. So I've kind of come in full circle over 46 years. And this is kind of where it started as far as aviation goes anyway. This is Honolulu, Hawaii, 1969 in December. And the airplane that I learned to fly in is 6573 Sierra. Shortly thereafter, I got out of the service. I was in the military at the time. I got out of the service and I came back to Montana, which is where I grew up, and went to Holman Flying Service in Great Falls, Montana to rent a Cessna 150 to kind of continue my flying. And it turned out it was 6572 Sierra. So I thought, well, that's kind of a good omen. Unfortunately, being a poor college student, I went back to college, and I did have more money than most college students because I was on the GI Bill. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a lot of flying while I was in college. So things kind of got put on hold. But I was a wildlife biology major, and that's what I wanted to do, was work with wildlife. I got a job, a seasonal job, while I was in college with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service operates some airplanes, and it occurred to me that that would be a really cool deal to be able to use airplanes and do the wildlife job. So anyway, doing a little research, and when I first went on full-time with the Fish and Wildlife Service, I did a little research, and I found out basically that the Fish and Wildlife Service at the time had 16 airplanes in the lower 48 states and 38 in Alaska. So you go where the business is, right? So very shortly after I went to work full-time for Fish and Wildlife Service, I moved to Alaska, and I was working for the National Wildlife Refuge System. And these are the 16 current refuges in Alaska. And I went to this one, right out here, the Eisenbeck National Wildlife Refuge. And I didn't go there as a pilot. I went there as a wildlife biologist. But I was an incidental pilot because I did have a pilot certificate. So they let me fly airplanes occasionally, but not a lot. It wasn't my primary duty. And just for perspective, the national park that's closest to me now, people know a lot about the national parks, and they tend not to know a lot about the National Wildlife Refuge System. So that's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is the largest national wildlife refuge in the world. It's about 19.7 million acres, and Yellowstone Park, for perspective, is 2.2 million acres. So these are pretty big areas. Well, Eisenbeck, this is the Eisenbeck Refuge right here, and we actually manage Unimak Island as well. Unimak Island is the first island in the Aleutian chain and the largest island in the Aleutian chain. And these are volcanoes, some of which are very active. And for perspective, Cold Bay, which is right here, this is Cold Bay itself. This is the village of Cold Bay. Cold Bay is at 55 north, which is not very far north. It's about the same latitude as Ketchikan, and 162.7 west. So for perspective, Honolulu is 157 west. So the beginning of the Aleutian chain is farther west than Honolulu. This is what it looks like on a good day when you can actually see it. That's Pavlof Volcano. If you've seen the news recently, Pavlof was spouting ash up to 37,000 feet. It had an ash plume up to 37,000 feet. That's what it looks like when it's a little angrier from Cold Bay. It's beautiful country. It's wild country. Big, huge beaches on the Bering Sea side that look like this. This is a Fish and Wildlife Service airplane. The 700 tail numbers were reserved for Fish and Wildlife for many years. 25-inch Goodyear air wheels on the airplanes, and we did a lot of beach landings and operated. Sometimes it looks a little angrier than that. Cold Bay has the highest mean wind velocity of any occupied village on Earth. It's 19 knots is the mean wind velocity, so you get a lot of this. And these are the volcanoes over on Unimak Island. This is from Eisenbeck Lagoon, looking over. And very shortly before I got to Cold Bay, we had a photographer who was in this area taking pictures of bears, and he was killed and eaten by a bear, literally. So that generated a lot of interest in learning something more about bears, and so we started trapping bears. And of course, this is not a dead bear, it's a sleeping bear with a dart gun leaning up against him. So we tagged a bunch of bears and put radio collars on them, and these were all bears that were coming around the village. And my record was I could just sit in my living room and set the radio receiver up on the counter and turn it on scan, and I could tell you who was in town, because the bears had come in town, and my record was 16 bears at one time. This is in a village of 80 people. And the next morning it looked like there'd been a rodeo in town. Well, this is Cold Bay, and the reason Cold Bay exists is this airport. And even today, this is a vital airport because of, if you've heard of ETOPS, the extended twin-engine overwater procedures for the jets and airliners. They have to maintain a certain distance from a landing site, and that's what Cold Bay serves for the trans-Pacific traffic. They have to stay close enough that they can either land here or then they move on to ADAC and so forth. So that's Cold Bay's primary purpose for being. It's an interesting part of the world. These are great whales. They migrate around the end of the Alaska Peninsula and around Unimak Island, and so we'd see them moving around all the time in the spring, and then in the fall they move back. And of course, every once in a while somebody dies, and you get this kind of a scenario where you got a big male brown bear, and he's pretty happy. He's protecting his catch. And you got all the ravens, of course, they're eating the scraps. Then you got the young brown bear over here. He's trying to sneak in there and get a bite, and a wolf. So it's kind of this is kind of the hierarchy. Big brown bear, little brown bear, wolf, and ravens. We, Fish and Wildlife Service used to have some fairly creative airplanes. At one point, Operation Home Run was going in Vietnam, and they were shipping a lot of pieces and parts back, and our maintenance guys got a hold of a whole bunch of OV-10 engines. And these are Garrett TPE 331 engines on a Grumman Goose. We use this thing for long-range overwater surveys, and an inertial nav system in it. This is way before GPS. And it was a great airplane. They used to let me sit in the right seat as long as I signed a warrant that said I would not touch anything. It was technically a two-pilot airplane by our policies, so I was the second pilot as long as I didn't touch anything. And we were coming back from a marine mammal survey in the Chukchi Sea with this thing, and the INS system crapped out on us, and so we couldn't navigate low level anymore. So Herman Roos was the pilot, primary pilot. Herman said, "Hell with it, let's go back to Cold Bay." So we had about 500 miles, I guess, to go. So he just punched up to 22,000 feet. There's no airways up there. There's nothing up there. It's Gulf airspace. So we're up there at 22,000. What we didn't know at the time was, because we didn't have an INS, is we had about 110 knot tailwind. And so I looked out the window at some point when we were about 150 miles out of Cold Bay, and there was an F4 parked over there. And I told Herman, I said, "Herman," and he said, "I know, there's one over here too." He said, "Get the book out and find out how to talk to these guys." And they were pretty friendly. They thought it was pretty funny. They said that the lead F4 pilot said afterwards on the phone that he'd never been able to fly a formation on a goose before. So, and this is what the real goose looked like. At one point I started to check out in this airplane, and Fish and Wildlife wanted me to have 50 hours with a minder in the right seat before they'd send me up for the check ride. And that's because the FAA didn't have any multi-engine C check airmen. So anyway, I did 46 hours, and then our senior senator gave the thing to the museum. And they called me up on Friday and said, don't bother coming up to Anchorage on Monday to pick up the goose, because the goose is gone. We also, one of the other TB331 engines we put on this airplane on a Beaver. So it's kind of a homemade turbine Beaver. And we, understandably enough, most of us refer to this thing as Pinocchio. It's still sitting, if you go up to Anchorage, you go down to Lake Hood, this airplane's sitting in the museum there now, on amphibious floats. But it was a remarkable airplane. Jim King, my first flight in this airplane, I was sitting in the right seat, Jim King is in the left seat. This is an 1100 thermodynamic horsepower engine, and they flat rated it at 750. So it had a lot of power, had a lot of gas in this thing as well. But we took off from Anchorage International runway 32, which is the long runway, the 747 freighter runway. We took off from there, and Tower asked us to expedite our climb. And Jim just turned to me and got a big smile on his face and just pushed the lever up. We, at one point, the Tower finally called us and said, could you say position? And he said, we're just over the shoreline, which is just past the departure end of the runway. And there was a little pause, and the controller said, say altitude. And Jim said, 8,000 feet climbing. And the controller came back and said, I guess I can release that 747 then, huh? Well, anyway, Cold Bay, this is Frosty Peak. The Eisenbeck Refuge is established for these guys, for the black brant, Pacific black brant. And you talk about flyers. These guys come in the fall to Eisenbeck Lagoon. They feed on the eelgrass, huge eelgrass beds in Eisenbeck Lagoon. And then when they get ready and they get a big storm comes out of the Bering Sea, they'll pick up. And you'll have, at that time, 250, 300,000 of these geese take off all at once in the evening. And they're picking up that northerly wind, that hard northerly wind, to get them a boost. Because they fly all the way to Baja San Quintin without landing. They lose about 30% of their body weight in that flight, and they don't land anywhere. And it's something like 90 hours of flight time, non-stop. So it's quite a migration. It's pretty impressive. Well, I had been doing some flying with our chief of refuges, and he had talked to me about what my goals and objectives were, and I said I wanted to be a dual function pilot. I wanted to be a pilot biologist as opposed to a biologist that kind of flew every once in a while. So he said, well, there's a job open in Kodiak for a pilot biologist, so why don't you put in an application? So I sent in an application, and 2 days later I had the job. And so I moved to Kodiak, and this is kind of the big picture. This is Kodiak Island. This is actually the Kodiak Archipelago. There's a whole series of islands here, starting down at Chirikov and the Trinity Islands, Kodiak, Afognak, Shuyak, and then the Barren Islands. And this is what the city of Kodiak looks like. It's about 6,000 population. Big Coast Guard base back this way from the town. This is a later photograph. This harbor wasn't here when I was there, when I worked there. And you can see a couple of the islands, the other islands in the archipelago up to the north. So this is basically the airplane I inherited initially, the 720 Piper Super Cub on Nito 2000 floats. And it pretty much stayed on floats all winter, although a couple of winters we did take it off floats and put it on wheels. Sometimes we take this airplane up to Anchorage and have some in the winter and have some maintenance work done on it in the winter, and then they'd give me the keys to another Cub to bring down on wheels. And again, as I said, this is the first airplane I bought, and I really enjoyed this airplane. It was a perfect Kodiak airplane because it's slow, doesn't carry much, but you really don't have to go very far because everything you want to do is on the island anyway. Well, Kodiak is about bears. Everybody kind of has heard the name Kodiak. So brown bears is what it's about, and when you're a wildlife biologist, of course, you know, you want to do research. And so this is kind of what you do they? And it turns out they do. But anyway, so that takes some tools, and the tools oftentimes fly. So here we have a Bell Jet Ranger landing in the Cub, and what we're going to do is go out and we're going to catch bears. We're looking for female bears, so I'd go out with the Super Cub and do some scouting, find the bears, call a helicopter crew, and they come out, chase the bear, catch the bear. And then we put radio collars on them. Over the course of 7 years, we handled over 200 bears. Some of these were repeat offenders, but nevertheless, we handled over, I think it was 217 bears total. We lost one bear in mortality, and it was the bear apparently died of anaphylactic shock, and was the only thing we could figure they were allergic to the immobilizing drug. But we typically handled them. We had a really good drug at the time called M99. It's a heavy-duty opiate. It worked very quickly, and the really nice thing about it, compared to the older drugs we used, was it had a reversal drug, M5050. So you could reverse the animal, but you had to do that intramuscular. You had to do an injection intramuscular. If you got it in the bloodstream, they recovered very quickly. So Vic Barnes and I were working a bear one day, and of course you got the rectal thermometer in the bear, and we got all our samples and stuff. The first thing you do is put the radio collar on, because if you have to reverse the bear starts going down on you, you reverse the bear and get them up really quick. And at least you've got a radio collar on them. But anyway, we got all the data. Helicopter pilot goes back over to the helicopter, and he's starting to spool the thing up. And Vic says, okay, I'm going to inject her with a reversal drug. It usually takes about 10 to 12 minutes for him to get up. And so he stuck her in the arm and injected the drug, and she stood up and walked off. And she still got this needle in her arm, you know. And I'm looking at Vic, and Vic is looking at me, and we're trying to get our heart rates back under control. And so we're putting everything back in the box, in the capture box, and Vic says, where's the thermometer? And I said, you know, this too shall pass. This is kind of what Kodiak looks like. You know, you walk around Kodiak, and people don't understand what grass is in this part of the world. That's grass, and that bear is not lying down. That bear is standing up, taking a peek at us. So you have to be a little cautious walking around on the island about who you bump into, but these bears are really mellow. They're easy to get along with. So this is what a good mama looks like on Kodiak with these cubs. A lot of these cubs on Kodiak have these natal rings. Well, after I'd been flying the Cub for about a year and a half, they decided I needed to do more work, basically. And they sent this airplane down, and actually this airplane was in Louisiana. So they said, go to Louisiana, pick up the airplane, fly it back up to Anchorage, we'll check it out. And that should have been the first clue. It turned out the airplane, they said that the Fish and Wildlife guy in Louisiana will give you a check out in the airplane. He'll check you out in the airplane. So I go to Louisiana, I don't know, hey, Houma, Louisiana. And I go and talk to the Fish and Wildlife guy, and they said, yeah, I'll check you out, sure, no problem. So we went out, we flew about an hour. He said, you're doing good, let's get out of here. He taught me how to start the thing, basically. Took it back to Alaska, dropped it off in Anchorage, and they did a bunch of work on it, mechanics did, which was good. And so this became my ride for the next, 6.5, 7 years, I guess. It's a great airplane. They took this airplane away from me and sold it and replaced it with a brand new Cessna 206, and I cried for a week. They said, why would you give me a brand new airplane? That old beater 1952 airplane? I mean, come on. I love that airplane. This is the part I didn't love so much. This is jet fuel, but we had to move avgas and jet fuel into our remote camp, so we had a boat come down, 50-foot boat, and I'd move 70 barrels of jet fuel and avgas in 3 days, and then 20 or 30 100-pound cylinders of propane, so a lot of work. Well, Kodiak the weather can be kind of bad at times. This is the village. You're coming in from the north, you come in here. If you're coming in from the west side, preferably, you come through this pass here, Buston Pass, and the airport, state airport is here, and this is where we parked the Beaver. And so I came around the north end one day, and I called the tower. And it's about 5 miles right here, so you're just barely in the Delta airspace. There is a tower here. You're just barely in the Delta airspace when you come past the town. Now there's a there's a float pond there and an airport there, and I can land on floats here. But I'm looking and the weather is, it's maybe 1.5 miles. And I think, well, my car is parked out at State Airport, right? So let's just go on to the state. And so I called Tower and told them I was inbound, and the tower controller came back and said, okay, weather is reported as 1.5 miles and 400 over. Okay, pretty good for Kodiak. So here we go. So I'm coming past the Sealand dock right here, and I'm thinking, this does not look like 1.5 miles visibility. And I'm going and going. In the meantime, Steve Harvey comes out, he's widgeon, and he called Tower and said he wanted to taxi out for departure and wanted special VFR clearance to the north. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'd go there. But anyway, so tower controller she cleared into taxi. And so I came in, well, this runway right here is right at the mouth of the Buskin River. So I thought, okay, I'll get the wheels down, I get the flaps down, and whenever I cross the Buskin River, I'm landing, which I did. So I land on this runway 28, and life is good. And I'm kind of, again, trying to get my heart rate back under control. And Steve Harvey calls Tower and says, okay, I'm ready for departure, because he had seen me land. And Tower comes back and says, unable, the field is IFR, 1/8 mile visibility. Say intentions. He says, well, I guess I'll intend to land, or to taxi back. And I'm going, okay. So I knew the controller, and she was doing me a favor, basically. And so I called her that evening after work and after her shift, and I said, you know, don't do me any more favors like that. I could land in town and get a ride, but sometimes they try to help you. Well, we did a lot of things with airplanes. Bald eagles, a lot of bald eagles. There's about 120 to 130 bald eagles that nest, pairs of bald eagles that nest on Kodiak. And so here's good old 720 in a former camouflage job doing eagle surveys. Whoops. And my mama told me when I was a child that there is no such thing as the boogeyman. And it turns out my mama was wrong. There is a boogeyman, and he lives right there. These are the Barren Islands. This is Shelikof Strait. And there's some of the nastiest weather on the planet lives right out there. You can have clear weather in Homer, clear weather in Kodiak, clear everywhere on the planet, and it'll be just, you know, like a 1.25 miles and 400 overcast out there in the Barren Islands and blowing 40 knots. So one of our check airmen was, I was up there on a Friday in Anchorage getting, I had to go back and forth for 100 hours on both airplanes to Anchorage. And one of our check airmen was there, it was on a Friday, and he said, hey, my daughter teaches school in Kodiak, could I ride down there with you? And I said, sure, hop in. So he gets in the Beaver, and we're flying down there, and we're at like 800 feet or 900 feet, and the overcast is just up there a little ways. And Jack was acting kind of nervous, and this is a pretty high time guy, acting kind of nervous, and he says, could you get a little higher? I said, Jack, you know, we're supposed to be 500 feet below the cloud, right? And I'm 500 feet below the cloud. I said, I don't give a damn. Get up there. Okay. So we climb up, and I'm sitting there, and I go, Jack, this is 40 miles of water out here. You know, another 500 feet isn't going to make a nickel. It will land on that wave instead of that wave, you know? And he goes, I know, but the waves look smaller. Okay, that's valid. Well, you see this, and this is the kind of thing you see in Kodiak when you get a dead whale wash up on the beach. I've counted this three times. I come up with about 42 bears there. So, you know, this is when you start thinking about, you fly over water, you don't really think about engine failures too much. You start thinking about engine failures when you're flying around this. This is a news article that came out. When we were capturing bears one time, I saw the wreckage of an old airplane. It was all grown up on one of the low passes in Kodiak. Been there for years, obviously. I went curious and went back to town, and I went to the Coast Guard base, and at the Rescue Coordination Center, they had a map that showed all the wrecks on Kodiak, of which there were quite a few. And they didn't have that one marked, so I told them about it, and they said, okay, we'll go out there with a helicopter one day, and we'll check it out. I didn't think any more of it. The next spring, we're catching bears again, and So we were up in that neighborhood, the helicopter pilot said, I need to go get fuel. So I said, hey, drop us off over there by that old dead airplane and we'll poke around. It happened to be a state trooper who was with me. He was helping us capture bears. And so they dropped us off over there and we started poking around. And Scott Gibbons was the state trooper. And he was poking around on the pilot side of this wreck and I was poking around on the other side. And Scott said, well, this is interesting. And I said, what's that? He says, there's a cowboy boot. Pulled his cowboy boot up and he looked inside and he said, this is even more interesting. I said, what's that? He said, there's a foot in here. What's left of a foot? Bones. Human bones. Well, it turned out that this thing had crashed many years before, in 1945. And so anyway, we took the data plate off the engine. We tried to find some identification on the airplane. The best we could tell, it was an old Stinson. But we couldn't quite come up with the match. And it turned out that did some research on the data plate on the engine. It didn't match a Stinson airplane. So it obviously had come off something else, got put on that airplane. And so Scott, state trooper, kind of out of frustration, he said, well, there really isn't much more we can do, so we will just we'll make a news release. So he made a news release. And 2 weeks later, it went out to the AP wire. 2 weeks later, he gets a phone call in the office, and it was from a gentleman, and he started talking about it. We found a wristwatch in the wreck, cowboy boots. There was a belt buckle, and none of these things all went to dead ends. The wristwatch had a name on it. That guy's buried in Southern California. So anyway, this guy called Scotty Gibbons in the state trooper's office, and he said, that's my daddy. And so Scott started asking him some questions because we hadn't given out all the information. He said, he was wearing a wristwatch, and the guy said, yeah, the name on the back of that wristwatch was, and he gave us the name. And this was information he couldn't have had, except that he knew. He said, my dad won that in a poker game. So it was interesting. This thing had crashed in 1945, and it sat out there with two dead people in it. It sat out there for all those years. Well, this is often what Kodiak looks like when the weather's good. Beautiful, calm weather, and there's the beaver landing. And I'd been there for 8 years. I was starting to get a little soggy around the edges because it is damp there. And I got offered a job in Fairbanks, Alaska. So on the 4th of July, 1986, I launched out of Kodiak and went up to Fairbanks. And this time I was going to the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge. Now Fairbanks is right about here. The refuge is up there. That's 13 million acres of swamp, mostly. But it's a phenomenal waterfowl area. It lies along the Yukon River and at the confluence of the Porcupine River and the Yukon River. And this is a major trading base for trappers in the early days. And this is Fort Yukon, or as the locals say, Fort Yukon. And the airport and Hospital Lake. So this is the seaplane base. And here's the Porcupine River, here's the Yukon River flowing by. Population of about 500, kind of a rough little town, but it's an interesting place. Lowest temperature, -76, highest 105. And it does get warm. The first summer I was there, it was over 100 degrees for about 2 weeks up on the Yukon Flats. And I inherited this airplane, brand new Cessna 185s, 1985 model 185 on PK 3500 floats. That's the Yukon River. This is why the Yukon Flats exist. These are all band recoveries from ducks that were banded on the Yukon Flats. They go all over. We have some interesting ducks up there. These are white-winged scoters. These are big sea ducks. They winter in the ocean, but they nest up on the Yukon Flats. That's a white-winged scoter hen sitting on her nest. And this is the kind of stuff they nest in. We did a study on these things, and they nest, the mean distance from water is 700 meters. Now, why in heaven's name a big, awkward sea duck with their legs way back on their body nests 700 meters from water is beyond us. We couldn't figure out how they get back to the water, you know? when the young hatch, well, it turns out, one of the crew called me one day on the satellite phone and he said, we just found out how they get back to water. And I said, how's that? He said, you ever seen a runner duck? These runner ducks stand just bolt upright. They're from South America. They stand bolt upright because their legs are so far back on their body, and then they run. And they can really move. Well, that's what these things do, it turns out. So they're walking through the brush, and here goes this duck. Goes running by them. Well, this is kind of what the Yukon Flats looks like, and this is two things. This is annoyance, and it's also food for these guys. We did we ran a map station. We banded these guys for 7 years. This is yellow warbler. Thousands and thousands and thousands of these neotropical migrant birds, most of which nest down in lower 48. Some of them go to South America. And there were some other things going on. This is a Yukon Flats basin, which happens to coincide with the Refuge nicely, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And so Exxon had a proposal to do a seismic survey on the Yukon Flats. And we basically agreed to allow them to do a seismic survey as long as it was all surficial. No downhole. They couldn't drill any holes, so they did all of the stuff surficial. And they did a good job. This is a 250-man camp on the lake ice, about 25 miles southwest of Fort Yukon. See a single-engine otter. My airplanes would park right back over here. We had electricity at a generator, and that was my home away from home that winter as the environmental monitor for this debacle. And it was a lot of fun. I landed there one day. Temperature in Fairbanks was about 25 below zero. The temperature in Fort Yukon was 19 below zero. I came in here, had no reason not to land. Couldn't figure out why these crews, they had 3 helicopters and these 2 otters and a 185 that lived here. Couldn't figure out why none of them were out at the landing zones on the line where they were working. They were all parked here, so I thought, oh well. So I landed, and when I descended down below the trees here to land on the landing strip, when I descended down below the trees, it was like diving into water. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And it was instantly cold, and it was minus 62 when I got there. And so I parked the airplane, put the covers on it. I was obviously there for a while. So this is the airplane on wheel skis. We operated the airplanes on wheel skis, big tires, floats, amphibious floats. This airplane always went on straight floats, not amphibious floats. They used Llama helicopters in that seismic program because they can run 2,500 pounds on a hook. They had some pretty interesting times. They were flying one at 58 below zero one day, and the engine quit because the fuel gelled, it turned out, stalled the fuel pump, and they auto-rotated, nobody got hurt. But they had to bring a mechanic an engineer from France over to supervise opening the case. And this guy bunked with me because I had the only spare bunk in my tent in the camp, so he bunked with me. And it was pretty interesting because this guy was mortally offended for several reasons. One, these guys were flying his helicopter at 58 below zero. But two, the really offensive part was he was flown out to the site of the helicopter in a Bell helicopter. And boy, did I hear about that. Well, you know, you build things in Alaska, and sometimes it's a little hard to move stuff around. So this is how you do it. This is Everett's Air. This is 1822 Mike. 1822 Mike. They hold 1,450 pounds or 14,500 pounds of freight out to. I was building a cabin for $1,400. Basically 10 cents a pound for freight. Land on a lake. This is a big long lake. And this was my airplane at that time that I owned. And I built this cabin. We did a lot of work at other stations, at other refuges. This is the Tetlin National Wildlife Refuge. As you can see, it's over on the Canadian border. And the Alaska Highway runs along part of this. This is Northway. And we used a helicopter and again, fixed-wing airplanes to capture wolves. And this is a predator-prey study. So what we did was we caught 2 wolves in each of the packs that were out there. There were 12 packs. We caught at least 2 wolves in each of the 12 packs, put radio collars on them, and then we followed them. And we located them every day for the entire time from, I think they started, I didn't get there until the 1st of February, but I think they started the 10th of January. So from then until the pack started to break up for the summer in April, we found those each pack every day, and then if they weren't on a kill, we'd backtrack to find out if they'd killed anything overnight. We'd backtrack to their previous location. So you spent a lot of time tracking, both with radios and then also with looking at the tracks, trying to find out where they had been. So this is pretty typical what you'd see. We had one pack that was 21 animals, 21 wolves. That's a big pack of wolves, and it takes a lot of meat to feed 21 wolves. And they averaged, over 45 days, they averaged a moose every day and a half. And they killed every moose they came up on. You know, you see the stories and people talk about, well, they killed the lame and the sick, and that's true. But you get that big a pack, and they kill every moose that they see. They didn't kill anymore. There was nothing but a whole bunch of gaseous emissions when they were done, and a little hide and some horns sometimes. But so this helicopter. This is Rick Swisher flying a R-44. He didn't work for us. He's a contractor. He is probably the best capture pilot that I ever saw. He's really good. He's still flying these days. And of course, Rick loves wolves. He loves to catch wolves. That's Rick. And ironically, I was driving back home from Yellowstone Park here about a month ago, and I came out of the north entrance to Yellowstone Park as Gardner. And the Gardner Airport is over there, and I saw an MD-500 helicopter parked over there. And I thought, I wonder. So I turned around and I drove down there, and there's Rick. So there he'd been catching mountain goats and wolves for Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. So he's still at it. He broke his back a couple of years ago in a helicopter crash. But nobody got killed, and he had a transmission fail. Really fortunate. He did a good job. He's a really good pilot. And so this is what we were trying to figure out what was going on. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wolves there in this pack. And this moose is probably a memory at this point. Well, we did moose surveys as well, and this is kind of a typical moose survey crew on a non-surveying day, obviously. But good group of people, a lot of flying. We'd use 5 or 6 airplanes, and the Yukon Flats tends to have a depressed moose population. There aren't a lot of moose there. So we were trying to figure out what was going on with the moose. And then, because the population was low and it didn't seem to be recovering, there was no sport hunting out there at all on the Yukon Flats. So the population really wasn't recovering. We wanted to find out more. So as a scientist, here you go. So this is Landis Lindgren flying a Jet Ranger. You can see that different colored door. That's a shooting door. It's got a fold down section. There's no window. It's got a fold down section so the shooter can stick a dart in this moose. This is the Yukon River, ice. So we caught, in 2 days, we caught 30 moose. I was flying the fixed wing airplane. Had to find them, verify their females. We caught 30 moose. I identified 29 of them accurately, and the 30th one, well, it was a boy. But fortunately, they figured it out before. It's pretty hard to tell these things. They don't have any antlers, of course, at this time of year. This is in the spring. This is the 1st of February, first week of February. They don't have any antlers. So you kind of have to, which is a little harder with a husky than it is with a helicopter. But anyway, so we'd catch them, put a radio collar on them. We shifted to another drug, which is carfentanil. It's actually a cocktail of carfentanil and another drug. It's a really nice drug for these animals because you can see her ears are up. She's awake. She's just calmed down to the point where she'll lay down. And these animals, you do not want to roll over because they'll regurgitate the rumen contents and die. They can aspirate the rumen contents. So you want them stand up on their sternum. And they'll do that. They just kind of lie down just as if they were going to sleep, and they'll sit there and very calm. It's a really nice cocktail of drugs to use on these animals, and then it too has a reversal drug. So this is kind of what we were trying to figure out. This is a real photograph. This is the hospital at Eielson Air Force Base. So I guess she's now no longer an expectant mother, but I guess she still has parking rights. We wanted to find out what the reproductive rate was and what the mortality rate was of young moose. And so after these 30 moose were out there, once they got up to the calving season, which starts about the 1st of May, we moved north to Beaver, Alaska, which is on the Yukon River, kind of in the center of this study area. And Beaver is a population of about 80 people. We lived in the gymnasium for 8 weeks each summer for 3 years. We had this airplane, a Bell Jet Ranger, and an R-44 occasionally that we used. And so we'd base out of there, and each morning I would get up and I'd go monitor each one of the cows. And I'd fly around a cow until I could verify that she did or did not have a calf. And if she didn't have a calf, I'd move to the next cow and so forth and so on. And if she had calves, then I'd make a note of that. We get done with all the cows, and then I'd climb up, call the helicopter crew on the radio, and say, okay, number so-and-so has calves, and here's her location, and give them the GPS coordinates. They'd saddle up the helicopter, come out, and catch the calves. And so this is kind of what you're doing. The helicopter would swing in. I'd find a landing zone fairly close to the cow for him from the husky overhead, and give him the coordinates, vector him in as he's coming in fast. He'd come in really fast and low. He'd come in, do a quick stop, kick the guys out. Oftentimes he couldn't land. He just had to do a low hover, and they did step out. 2 guys get out, called the muggers. And they get out. One had an orange shirt, one had a yellow shirt. So I could identify them. We could all identify them from the air. They wore earbuds and radios, so we could talk to them. They couldn't talk to us, but we could talk to them. So we could tell them, run like hell, and stuff like that. Important information. And so I'd walk them in. I'd talk to them and walk them in until I get about 10 or 15 meters from the cow with the calves. And then I tell Joe, the helicopter pilot, I said, all right, Joe, come in, and I give him this well, that may not work anymore, so let's try something else. Can you still hear me? Okay. So anyway, helicopter would come in at pretty high speed. I'd get him in close to the cow. He'd do a quick stop in her face. And usually the cow would flush and run. And if she did, then I'd run these guys in. This is Mark Bertram. Mark's wearing the yellow shirt. Jim McCarran would wear the orange shirt. And I'd walk them into where the calves were. The calves would just lay down. That's their reaction to a predator or a problem. And these guys, these 2 are 2-day-old calves. So what we found is if they were 4 days old, you couldn't catch them. You couldn't run them down because they'd get up and run at 4 days. So first day, second day, 3 days. We had 3 days to catch these guys, or we had to give up. It turned out, and what we wanted to know was what the mortality rate was. Turned out the mortality rate was about 83% of these calves were killed in the first 6 weeks of life. And so, which is pretty high. It's a little bit higher than the rest of Alaska, but it's not that much higher. It's about 6 or 7% higher than most of Alaska moose populations. But we also wanted to know who was doing the killing. Well, it turns out that about half of them were being killed by grizzly bears. And it turns out there are a lot of grizzly bears out there that we didn't really know because it's really dense habitat. And the other half is killed by these guys. In 3 years, 3 seasons of running this project, we had 1 moose calf killed by a wolf. And all the rest of them were killed by black bears or brown bears. Rocking again. If I can figure out how to get this thing on again. Here we go. There we go. All right. So, anyway, so again, we're biologists, right? So we find out information, but it's not enough information. So we needed to, we knew there were a lot of black bears out there. We didn't know how many. We didn't know what the densities were. So we set up a trap line one spring, and we caught 26 black bears in 2 weeks in a one lake system that had 20 miles of shoreline. A lot of black bears out there, and this is a black bear this is Jim McCarran and Mark Bertram, and they're putting a radio collar on the bear. And it turned out that with these bears, we followed all these bears for 7 years. We had we kept 26 female bears. We only tagged females. It turns out male bears have a bigger neck than they do a head. They're kind of like sailors. And so radio collars kind of fall off, you know. But anyway, so we followed these guys, and we would go out in the winter and change radio collars. We'd dig them out of their dens and change the radio collars. It was a really fun project. We had other projects going on. This is a fire on the Yukon Flats, and in 1988, that was the year Yellowstone burned, right? Yellowstone burned 770,000 acres in 1988. Catastrophic fires. It was awful. 1988, before the Yellowstone fire started, we burned 1.2 million acres on the Yukon Flats, and nobody ever heard of it. So we had one fire that was 1.2 million acres. Only about half of it was on the Refuge. So anyway, there's a lot of fire suppression activity goes on out there, a lot of smoke. This is Mark and Jim again. We had a lot of fires going on out there, and I told them, I don't want to take you out there, because if I take you out there, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get you. If the wind shifts, I'm not going to be able to come and get you back and bring you back to town. So they said, no, don't worry about it. We'll take that risk. Okay, so they were doing fishery research, right? So I took them out, dropped them off on a lake. Well, about a week later, they were supposed to have been picked up in 4 days. About a week later, they're just totally, it was nasty. And so I open up my email in the morning thinking, because they had a satellite phone. I open up my email in the morning and I get this. And they said, a little smoky up here this morning, don't bother to come. And anyway, we moved a lot of stuff around. In Alaska, you can do external loads legally. We did a lot of external loads. I did a lot of external loads with these canoes, 10-foot. These are 10-foot Old Town canoes. Put one on each side. You can see there's one on each side, and move them from camp to camp out there on the flats. I did a lot of. I also did law enforcement work. I had law enforcement authority for many years, and one year the bureaucracy decided they were going to do more law enforcement work on the Yukon Delta out in western Alaska about people shooting ducks in the spring. And I thought, bad idea. You know, those guys have been shooting ducks in the spring for about 2,000 years, folks. And I don't think I want to go out there and tell them they can't do that. But anyway, we're going to Lime Village, and Lime Village is not one of the friendliest villages in Alaska. As a matter of fact, it's right down there at about number 84 on the friendly village end of things. And so I go to Lime Village, and I'm taking the boss, the big boss. He was our chief of law enforcement in the Alaska region. I take him out there because he's having a meeting with the 84 villagers or however many there were there. And I said, look, I'm staying with the airplane at the airport because I want to be able to fly home, not walk home. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So he went into town. So I'm sitting out there by the airplane. It's kind of a nice day. And this old guy comes, old Yupik Eskimo guy comes out on his four-wheeler. And he comes pulling up, and he's sitting on the four-wheeler, and he looks at me. And I got a uniform on and shoulder patch. He looks at the shoulder patch, and he said, "Do you fish and wildlife?" I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I am." He said, "Do you know Bob Burkholder?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do know Bob Burkholder." How do you know Bob Burkholder? He said, "Bob Burkholder, he's a bad man." And I said, "So why is Bob Burkholder bad?" He goes, "Years ago," he said, "7 of us, we were up on the mountain. We were hunting caribou out of season. Bob Burkholder, he flew over, and Burkholder was a pilot. He was a wolf trapper. He hunted wolves for Fish and Wildlife back when we did that kind of stuff. And Bob had a Super Cub, and he was a major wolf killer. He shot him from the air, and he poisoned him and did all kinds of stuff. But anyway, this old guy says, yeah, he said, we were up there, we were hunting caribou. Airplane flies over, and one of the young guys over there, they were on snow machines. So one of the young guys shot at him with a rifle. And he said, the airplane turns around, and he said, I saw the door come open on that airplane, and a shotgun came out. And he said, we all ran for it. He said he made 8 or 10 passes on those snow machines, and he shot everyone to hell. Wasn't one of them would run. And he was using number 4 buckshot. And he said, shotgun went back inside the airplane, door closed, and he left. So we walked 7 miles in knee-deep snow back to Pine Village. And he said, Bob Burkholder, he's a bad man. I said, yeah, I'd go along with that. Now there's law enforcement for you. Well, sometimes you get a little casual. You know, it's, I mean, when it's 100 degrees out there and you're flying float planes, I mean, why not get a little bit sporty, right? And so this was the first time I ever flew an airplane wearing shorts. And I was out there moving some canoes around, dropping some crews off. Well, the next time I wore shorts, that's what happened. The crankshaft broke on the airplane. Now, I don't know if any of you believe in karma, but I'm thinking the shorts caused that. I don't know. Anyway, it was over the White Mountains, headed north. Fortunately, I didn't have any external loads on, but crankshaft broke, and I went downhill, but there wasn't any place pretty to land. Actually, the only place I could find that didn't have a lot of big trees on it was a spot that had just burned, and it burned the week before, but the fire was out, so that's where I parked, and it's just all tussocky and nasty stuff. And so I got out of the airplane and made sure it wasn't going to light on fire, and got back in, turned on the radio, and on 121.5, and keyed up the mic and said, any aircraft, any aircraft. I've had an accident up here in the White Mountains, north of Fairbanks. Any aircraft, could you relay a message to ATC for me? Voice comes back, this is Japan Air, flight 121. How may we help you, sir? Wow, that's cool. You know, that worked right away. So where are you guys? We at 41,000 feet. Okay. And they were basically overhead. So they relayed a message, and pretty soon helicopter comes out to get me, and I went back into town. Well, I got into town that evening, and I got home, and my wife said, so how was your day? And I said, it was fine. I wrecked the airplane. And she said, oh, okay. Well, she said, you know, we're having dinner with my cousins from Texas tonight. They're coming through on a cruise, and I haven't seen them for like 25 years, so I don't want you talking about your airplane stuff all evening. I said, yeah, that's cool. So we go to dinner, and I'm sitting there drinking wine, a lot of wine, and getting happily sloshed. Big smile on my face. So I'm thinking her cousins still think that Gina married a pretty dumb slosh in Alaska. Well, the next day, they were bringing this thing in a helicopter. It's a sling load in a helicopter. And I took Gina, I said, let's go out to the airport. I want to see this thing coming in. She said, I don't want to go out there. And so we went out there, and they'd already dropped it off on the ground. But anyway, she took one look at it, and she said, oh my. She said, I thought when you said you crashed, it was just kind of a minor thing. And I said, well, that's a pretty minor thing. I didn't hurt. Anyway, so they replaced that airplane with this airplane. This was actually rebuilt by Whip Air. It was a completely reconditioned 1973-206. Great airplane. Just a super airplane to carry big loads in. And it was a good performer. Had an IO 550 in it. So just a great airplane. We worked on a lot of different things, and I supported a lot of projects and programs. I supported the fisheries guys. This is an in-canoe, otherwise known as a she-fish. It's the largest of the whitefish family. This is about a 22, 24-pound fish. They're really phenomenal fish. They're anatomous. They go out to sea, and they come in and out. And a fellow named Randy Brown, and that's Randy Brown's waders right there. But anyway, a fellow named Randy Brown was our fisheries biologist that worked in the office down the hall. And I worked with Randy a lot on these studies. Put radio transmitters surgically implanted in these fish, turn them loose, and they go all over Alaska. It was absolutely awesome. We tracked one of these fish from the upper Anoka River, went all the way down the Anoka, into the Yukon, went out to the mouth of the Yukon, came back up the Yukon, all the way up to the Canadian border in 3 weeks. And this thing was moving. And their spawning area, it turned out, their spawning area is on the Yukon Flats. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they spawn in about the middle of October, and the river's iced over by then. So this fish was way up here, went down the Kuskokwim, out, back up the Yukon, and all the way up to here. And I don't know, that's 1,800 miles. That's a lot of miles. They're amazing fish. Well, I sold the Super Cub and I moved to this airplane. Some of you have probably seen this airplane. I had it here in Minnesota for 7 years. Cessna 170, had a 180 horsepower Lycoming engine on it. Had it on wheels and skis and floats at various times. I did a lot of float instruction with this because I'm one of those weird individuals that has more float time than wheel time. Still, I'm catching up gradually, but we did a lot of ski work. This is, I was talking about that bear project. This is Mark Bertram. He's sticking a mama bear down in that den. You can see how deep the snow is. It's about 4.5, 5 feet deep here. We dragged the female out. Now, Mark was the tunnel man. He'd go down there and grab him and put a lasso around one leg and drag him out. We'd drag him out, the two of us. People asked me what I did, and I said, I take pictures. He's younger than me and not so bright. So, crawling down the hole with a live black bear, you know, whatever. Anyway, these are baby black bears. These guys are a week old. Eyes are still closed, and they are at full song because they are not happy. Their entire life has been dark, warm body, and a milk bar. And now, we drag them out into 20 below zero, right? And they're not happy. So what I would do is I'd shove them down the front of my insulated coveralls, and they would instantly be happy because dark, warm, and now they start looking for the milk bar. So while we're working on the female, they're roaming around in my suit trying to find the milk, you know, and take them about 20 minutes to realize there is no milk here. And then they'd start screaming again. But in the meantime, we'd have Mom worked up, and we'd put her back in the den, give her the reversal drug, put her back in the den, put the kids back with her, so everybody's happy again. Well, this is the Yukon Flats Hilton. This is what that says. This is a trapper's cabin. Anybody know why that door is so wide? If you got to work on your snowmobile and it's 72 below zero, you don't want to do it outside. So it's wide enough to get a snowmobile in. That's the criteria. Look at how big this thing is. And it's only about 8 feet front to back. Guys, go in there in October, come out in May. And they were a little shack nasty by the end of the winter. And I'd stop in there, and it'd take you 2 hours to get away from them. You know, you're an enforcement guy, and they'd love to see us. Like, oh, thank you. I haven't talked to anybody live human for, 3 months? So it was a lot of fun. We did some training up on the glaciers, and I flew support for the Park Service. Now if you've been watching the news recently, you see the CH-47s, Chinook helicopters from Fort Wainwright come down there and support them, which is a lot more efficient, by the way, than I was. But anyway, that is Mount McKinley. It's now officially Denali. But anyway, this is the base camp, 7,200 feet. So we did some training up there, and again, I'd fly support. And every 2 weeks, the climbing rangers, the rescue rangers got swapped out. So I'd take them out there. They'd go up to 14,000 feet on their own. They'd climb up there on their own, but then we do crew changes here at the 7,200 foot level at the main base camp. Well, in 2005, I hit age 57, and a few things were changing. At that point, you can't do law enforcement work anymore for the federal government, and so the badge and the gun go away, and a couple other things life was changing on the job. We were getting a new boss, and I had it really, really good for a long time. And I got offered a job here at the University of Minnesota in Crookston, up there in the corner of Minnesota. And so I took the job, and my wife and I moved down here. What a great lady. I went home one day and I said, I got offered a job in Northwest Minnesota. She had lived in Fairbanks for 32 years. I met her there. So I'm thinking this is not going to be an easy sale. I walked in the door, I said, hey, I got offered a job in Northwest Minnesota. She said, good, when are we going? I said, beg your pardon? She said, when are we leaving? Okay, so we left on the 13th of December, 2005. Drove the Alaska Highway in the middle of winter with 3 dogs, and went to work here. And it was a great place to work. It was a lot of fun. The aviation program, working with young men. This is Alvin Tong. Alvin was from Indonesia. Really nice young man, very bright young man, a lot of fun. Comes from Indonesia, right? And he arrives in Northwest Minnesota, and it's like 64 degrees, and this guy's got a winter parka on with the hood up, and he's going, man, it's really cold here. And I thought, oh, Alvin, you ain't seen nothing yet. But nice kid. He was there for 4 full years, and he was active. This is another one of the students, and this is the airplane we contracted with UND for aircraft, so we used their aircraft and leased them from them. This young man is flying a spray plane now up in Northwest Minnesota. So a lot of fun working with these young people. Changes your attitude. You know, I've been working with a lot of old goats in Fish and Wildlife Service for a long time, and I was getting to be an old goat myself. It was a lot of fun to come down and deal with nice kids. Never had any obnoxious students at all. Just a lot of fun to work with. Well, anyway, I fly out to Montana. This is Missouri Breaks in Montana. But at some point, I came down with a little case of melanoma. And it turns out the FAA doesn't like melanoma very much. But fortunately, melanoma is fairly easily cured. And so they cut this piece off my arm and took a lymph node, and they judged, the surgeon said, you're fixed. That's good. The FAA, on the other hand, found out that the lesion was 0.8 centimeters, so deep, and if it's over 0.75, you go to a special issuance. So my special issuance was very expensive, and they wanted me to do that every year, and I said, I'm not going to do that every year. So I retired from the university. I re-retired, so to speak. I sold the 170 to a gentleman from Fairbanks, as a matter of fact. So the airplane is back home. And I bought this airplane. And this is the Piper PA-11, 90-horse Cub. So my avionics suite consists of an iPad. And that's the starter, right there. And life is pretty simple, and it's good. This is Missouri Breaks. Flying around out there is a lot of fun. And last summer, of course, I had missed one issue of Oshkosh. And last summer, I decided that I needed to go to Oshkosh. So I climbed in the Cub, and down the Missouri River we go. And 24.3 hours round trip to Oshkosh in a Cub, and it was great. Coming back from Oshkosh, I put 9.1 hours in the airplane one day because thunderstorms were chasing me. And it was actually, you know, the last time I did 9 hours in a Cub in a day was when I was 26 or 27. And it really didn't bother me as much last year as it did back then. So life is actually pretty good. This fellow is, where is he? There he is in the back. Jim Youngren and his grandson. This is Colton, right? Yeah. Last year, they parked next to me. We arrived simultaneously in Oshkosh. And if you know what the odds of that are, if you've ever been to Oshkosh, you know, I mean, two airplanes coming in from two completely, Jim's from Halleck, Minnesota. So we had a great time wandering around. Another friend of mine, you know, one of the things about aviation is you get to know some great people, and you get to see great airplanes. In this case, this gentleman flew for Northwest Airlines for many years, became a Delta pilot, is now retired. That's a 1939 Cessna Airmaster on Whip Air floats. And he let me fly the thing. How cool is that? lots of friends. This is Fargo. Jim's in there somewhere too. And Bob Odegaard's Super Corsair. So it was just a group of people we got to know while I was in Northwest Minnesota. Now, moved out to Montana. My wife and I, and we live in Bozeman, Montana, enjoying the airplane. This is Heller Bottom down on the Missouri River. We're really enjoying the place, and Gina really loves it, and I love it. And that's about it. We've kind of come full circle. Flew a few different airplanes, seen a lot of country, and just had a really great time. It was a great way to earn a living, but you know, I'm just about as happy burning 5 gallons an hour of auto gas as I was when I was spending a lot more money for airplanes, and it's just about as good as working for a living. So anyway, anybody have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out here. Appreciate you coming to this again.